While I was doing that song, I made up my mind that I wanted to share a story with you people. It's a true story. I ain't making any of this up. This really happened. I worked about 20 shows for the United States Air Force over in the Far East. We worked the Philippines, Okinawa, Japan, and Korea. Had a wonderful time. And while we were over there, the Air Force was nice enough to ask old Jerry if he would like to ride in one of them sophisticated F-16 airplanes. And I was dumb enough to say, yeah. So this general, he says, okay, when you get to Misawa, Japan, I'll arrange it. I'll have it all arranged for you. I said, fine. So we land in Japan. I'm walking off the plane, and I see this Jeep just barreling across that tarmac. And there's this dude sitting in there, and he got a cigar sticking out of his face. And he runs up to the screeching halt and jumps out of that Jeep. He runs over and he says, you Jerry Reed, aren't you? I said, yeah. He said, boy, I'm glad to meet you. I'm the one who's going to take you for a ride in that F-16 plane. And I said, great. He said, yeah, my name's Bubba. Excuse me, just your name's Bubba? He said, yeah. I get in the Jeep with Bubba. I find out a lot about him. He's a colonel. And he never, ever plans to be no general. Don't want to be no general. Because when you become a general in the Air Force, they stash you behind a desk and you push a bunch of papers. And he likes to fly the airplanes and mess with the toys and fly with the boys. So consequently, he's been a colonel for 85 years. He takes me to this big old warehouse, right? Drops me off and leaves me there with a lieutenant who happens to be a beautiful young lady. And he said, now I'm going to go down and warm up the plane, and they'll bring it down there. When we finish, we'll go fly. I said, fine, Bubba. So I introduced myself to the lady, and I said, what are we going to do, honey? She said, follow me. We're walking in the building. She says, I'm going to brief you on egress training. I says, excuse me, what did you say? I said, don't egress mean get out of? She said, yeah. I said, well, honey, I got a flash for you. I ain't going to be getting out of nobody's F-16. But you have to do this in order to fly because they don't let anybody fly in them airplanes. And when you do, you have this stringent thing. I said, okay, fine, let's go. So we walk in there and she says, and the first thing I've got to do is fit you for a parachute. Well, I'm thinking, Delta Airlines don't make me wear no parachute. You go in there, and there's a ceiling about the height of this, and they got this parachute harness hanging from the ceiling. What it is straps, and you step into the bottom of the parachute down there. It got straps down the front, straps down the back on both sides, and you hook down, and you hook them down here, and you straddle. So I jump in there, and I grab these on this side, and I hook them in the straddle, and I grab these over here, and I hook them in the straddle, and the last guy to wear this parachute was little Jimmy Dickens. You know, she said, is that tight, Mr. Reed? I said, well, I wasn't talking this high a minute ago. So we finally get my voice back down to normal. I throw it over in the pile. She says, now you're going to be flying over the sea of Japan. So you need one of these. And she handed me this rubber suit. Must have weighed 40 pounds. I said, fine. I threw that over there in my pile. And she said, now put this on. I said, what is that? She said, this is a G suit. And I'm like, y'all, I don't said, what's a G suit? Well, what a G suit is, friends, is when you get in these really fast, highly maneuverable F-16 airplanes, everything is at high speeds. And the G stands for gravity suit. Because when you make a turn as fast as they go, sometimes you put 6, 7, 8 G's on you. And with each G-force, you can double your weight. So my weight, if I have 6 G's on me, I'm going to weigh in the neighborhood of 1,000 pounds, see? And it's very scientific. It goes over your legs, then it comes over your thighs, and it fits around the abdomen down here, see, like this. And when you're diving down and he pulls out that diving and geez, hits you like this, see. Well, actually what it does, it keeps the top of your body from going out the bottom of your body. You know what I mean? That's what it actually does. Then I threw that over there in my pile. And she says, follow me. So we go over to this table. And there's this cushion. They got this cushion that sits on the seat of your F-16 fighter plane. And she says, I want to introduce you and brief you on your survival cushion. I'm not liking her choice of words here at all. See, I'm not having a good time with this. And she unzips that thing, and they got everything in there. They got a two-way radio, flares, strobe lights. They got bee sting, snake bite kit, M&Ms. They got everything you think of. I looked in there, and I saw this pint bottle of water. And I said, excuse me, is that water there? She said, yes. I said, well, what do you put? Got to have water in your survival cushion? She said, well, we've learned through experience that when a pilot ejects from an F-16 airplane, it's usually he's in dire straits, he's in emergency. And when he ejects, he's under a lot of pressure, stress. And when he lands on the ground, he's usually dehydrated. And the first thing he wants is a drink of water to replace the fluids, And I said, all right, well, maybe you better put 2 or 3 of them in there for me, honey. Because if Bubba and me eject out of that airplane, my body's just going to squirt water all over the heavens. I'm talking a quart load of you, honey. And I really got into that survival cushion now. See, I want my survival cushion. I don't know if I'm looking at it as a little vial in there. I said, what is that? She said, well, I'm glad you asked. Let's say that you and Bubba have actually ejected into the Sea of Japan, all right? And you're bobbing up and down out there, and you're 2 little bitty guys. And we're up here at thousands of feet, and we're looking for you. And we can't see you, but you can see us. What you do is you take this little vial, you break it into and introduce it into the seawater. And what it does, it puts kind of a yellow orangish stain around you, and we can see you from way up in the sky. Well, I thought about that. And I said, tell you what, I'm going to save the Air Force some money. I think you can put that little vial back on the shelf, because if Bubba dumps me in the Sea of Japan, honey, I'm going to leave a stain all the way to Tokyo. Finally, I get through all this. Now I got to put this stuff on with a helmet. Man, I look like I'm ready to walk on the moon. I must have weighed 240 pounds. I ride down there and I barely get out of the Jeep. It takes 3 crew members to get me in the airplane. I thought they was going to get block and tackle. They finally get me in that F-16. And they're huge. They're huge. And 2 guys strap me down, and then Bubba crawls in and he hits that button and that bubble canopy goes. I'm in there with Bubba now. Bubba said, Jerry, let me brief you on this airplane. Have you ever flown one of these? And I said, no, don't worry about it, Bubba. I've flown a lot of them 747s. He said, well, this airplane's a little different, Jerry. He says it weighs 23,000 pounds, and the engine has 24,000 pounds of thrust. You have 1,000 more pounds of thrust than you do body weight, so it will go straight up in the air. But when I take off, Jerry, I'm going to use the afterburner. And he says, what that does is that increases our thrust 3-fold. Now, I ain't no Albert Einstein, but I figured out real quick that I'm sitting in a 23,000-pound plane with in the neighborhood of 75,000 pounds thrust, right? So I ain't in an airplane no more. I'm sitting straddle of a rocket and Bubba's driving. He said, now, when I hit the afterburner, I don't want you to be alarmed. You're going to hear 5 explosions, but you're in no danger. What's happening is the F-16 is merely dumping raw fuel into the exhaust pipe, and it's igniting, and what you're hearing is the boom of the fuel, and each time you hear an explosion, we're going to pick up speed. And by the time we get down to the end of this runway, we're going to be doing in the neighborhood of 450 miles an hour. And he said, oh, by the way, your band has requested and received permission to sit at the end of the runway in this observation booth and take pictures as we go back. He said, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this airplane at about 30 feet. And when we go by, you can wave at your band real quick. And then, Jerry, hang on for the damnedest elevator ride you ever had in your life. And with that, he said, are you ready? You know. And as macho as I could sound, I said, goes that thing, Bubba. And with that, friends, Bubba put it into afterburner, and that was the end of Jerry Reed. I have never felt nothing like that in my life. About 3 G's hit me and slammed me back against that seat. And I knew there had to be 2 black holes in my head where my eyeballs used to be, because they had to be back here somewhere in my skull. And that F-16 literally leapt off that ground. And here we go. I looked down and my belly didn't stick out no more. And boy, I heard them 5 pops. Boom, 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 boom. Then I heard the 6th boom, and that wasn't that jet airplane either. Man, we're going out through there, and Bubba gets that thing about 30 feet off the ground. He says, Jerry, there's your band over there at the right. He said, wave at him. And I said, and suddenly Bubba just jerked that stick back. And that F-16 shot straight up in the sky. And suddenly, I ain't got no neck. It's buried down here in the lower regions of my body. You know what I mean? And I remember I wanted to scream. I tried desperately to scream, but I couldn't get my upper lip off my lower lip. Here we go. And Bubba finally levels that F-16 airplane off. And I want to know how high we was, so I scraped my breakfast off at altimeter. And we were at 16,000 feet, and I glanced down at my watch, and we've been flying 12 seconds. Well, I guess Bubba must have sensed that he had a civilian in the back of his airplane. Because he said, well, now, Jerry, we're going to fly along here straight and level for a while and kind of gather ourselves together. I said, Bubba, gathering is good. So as we're flying along there, he said, you know, we don't do this frequently. He said, allow people to fly in these airplanes. So what I'd like to do is ask you, do you want the abbreviated tour or you want the whole package? Well, I'm in it now. I said, well, Bubba, just give me the whole package. And with that, he proceeded to go insane. Bubba went through every maneuver the Air Force ever showed him in his natural life. He turned to the right real hard, and I pulled about 5 G's. And then he flipped that thing on his head, and I looked straight up, and I'm seeing the ground. Next thing, I look up, and I'm seeing the sky, and he's doing this, he's doing that. And finally, he said, now, Jerry, we're going to do a loop. And he put that old F-16 in a straight dive, and he must have dove 50 miles. And I mean, that plane was screaming. And he said, hang on, and he jerked that thing back. And them G's hit me, and I remember thinking, I hope that pretty lieutenant put some preparation H in that survival cushion. Bubba said, he said, we're blowing it out now, ain't we, Jerry? I said, yeah, my exhaust is exhausted. And then we get up there and he said, well, now, we're over the Sea of Japan. We're over the Sea of Japan. We are going to go supersonic. And he hit that afterburner again, and here we tore out and we broke the sound barrier, and you ain't never heard a noise like that in your life. I said, Baba, what's that noise? He said, Jerry, what's that odor? I said, never mind, Bubba, just outrun it. Are you with me? I'm taking you with me. And he's flying along, and he said, you know, we can't stay in afterburner too long. We run low on gas. I said, I'm already low on gas, Bubba. He said, well, hang on, I'm going to slow this thing down. And at 1,200 miles an hour, and Bubba puts on the brakes. Now, there ain't nobody briefed me on negative G. You know, reverse G's, none of that stuff. And I don't know if you've ever been traveling 1,200 miles an hour and somebody scream on the brakes and he hit that thing and my lips nearly popped off. Then we're flying along and he says, Jerry, he said, we've been out here so long that I'm out of fuel and I'm going to have to go back to the air base. I said, imagine that. So we fly back. In a minute, them wheels hit that terra firma. I'm a different man. Suddenly I turn into John Wayne. I know I'm going to live. We taxied that big old airplane back to the hangar and the band's all rushing out. Me and Bubba crawl out. Bubba says, how the takeoff look, guys? And my guitar player said, well, it looked kind of funny, Bubba. What do you mean? He said, well, it's the first time I've ever seen a jet airplane take off with a brown stream behind it. True story now. I ain't lying.